Albus Percival Wulfric Brian Dumbledore? The name echoes through the halls of Hogwarts like that of a saint, the wise headmaster, the guiding light, the hero behind the curtain. But if you strip away the titles, the half-moon spectacles, and that comforting grandfatherly smile, what do you really see? Maybe not a savior, maybe not even a hero. Maybe, just maybe, you see a man who was willing to manipulate fate, bend innocence, and sacrifice lives, including the one of a child, to shape a war he believed only he could win. Because today, we're asking a question that rewrites everything you thought you knew about the Harry Potter saga. Was Dumbledore actually evil? Not evil in the way Voldemort was. Not a murderer or a tyrant, but a different kind of darkness, the kind that hides in light. The kind that smiles gently while pulling the strings. A puppet master cloaked in wisdom. A general who sees children not as people but as pieces on a chessboard. Let's begin where it all starts. October 31st, 1981. Voldemort has fallen. Lily and James are dead. Harry Potter, barely a year old, has survived the killing curse and unknowingly become the final Horcrux. Now ask yourself, what would a good man do? A truly good man? Dumbledore could have raised Harry himself. The boy was an orphan, and the wizarding world was desperate to protect him. Minerva McGonagall even begs him not to leave Harry with the Dursleys. She knows what they are, cruel, abusive, terrified of magic. But Dumbledore turns his back. He leaves Harry, a literal baby, in a blanket on the doorstep of a suburban house like he's leaving a letter in the mail. Why? He tells us it's because of blood magic, that Lily's sacrifice created a protection which only Petunia, her sister, can sustain. That as long as Harry lives under her roof, he will be safe. And that might sound noble until you realize he leaves that baby in the hands of people who starve him, lock him in a cupboard, emotionally torment him, and make him feel worthless. For 10 years, without ever checking in. No letters. No visits, nothing. Because Dumbledore didn't want Harry to grow up a hero. He wanted him to grow up humble, meek, unaware of his fame, unaware of his power. And that's not compassion, that's control. Fast forward to Harry's first year at Hogwarts. He's finally free from the Dursleys, finally able to breathe. And yet the danger doesn't stop. In fact, it escalates. Why does a school for children contain a deadly three-headed dog, a cursed broomstick, a troll, and a secret chamber of traps guarding the Philosopher's Stone? And more importantly, why does Dumbledore let Harry go after it? Why doesn't he stop him? Because again, he's testing him, measuring him. Each obstacle isn't just a coincidence, it's a trial. A puzzle piece in Dumbledore's larger plan to shape Harry into the boy he needs him to become. When Harry looks into the mirror of Erised, Dumbledore appears behind him, silently, like a ghost. He doesn't scold Harry. He doesn't remove the mirror. He just plants a seed of mystery, then walks away. This becomes a pattern. Dumbledore appears just enough to guide Harry, but never enough to protect him. He lets him face danger, lets him suffer, because he believes pain sharpens purpose. But let's get to the heart of it. The prophecy. Neither can live while the other survives. Dumbledore knows about this prophecy long before Harry ever hears it. He knows Harry is the only one who can kill Voldemort, and that Voldemort, through his own actions, has marked Harry as his equal. And yet, he says nothing. Not in year 1, not in year 2, not in year 3. He waits, watching as Harry fights basilisks, as he battles Dementors, as he nearly dies in the Triwizard Tournament. And only after Harry loses Sirius, his last remaining family, does Dumbledore finally tell him the truth. And what is his excuse? I cared too much for you. But think about that. Dumbledore, who left Harry in an abusive home, who let him face death over and over again, who kept vital truths hidden, now claims it was love that made him lie. Or was it that he needed Harry to be angry enough, broken enough, to do the unthinkable? Because in his heart, Dumbledore knows Harry must die. That the piece of Voldemort's soul inside him must be destroyed, and that only death can do it. He raises a boy to die, and then waits for the right moment to tell him. This is not kindness, this is orchestration. Harry was not nurtured, he was weaponized. But it goes deeper, because the more you dig, the more you realize that Dumbledore wasn't just planning this war. He was shaping it. He needed Harry to face Voldemort. He needed him to survive long enough to play his part. And every moment of pain, from the cupboard under the stairs to the graveyard in year 4, was part of that preparation. Still think he's a hero? Still think he's the only one Voldemort ever feared? Or was he the only one who knew exactly how to outplay Voldemort and was willing to use an orphan child to do it. Because the Dumbledore we think we know may not be the Dumbledore that actually existed. So far, we've seen a man who raised a boy in silence, let him suffer in shadows, and prepared him for death without ever fully telling him why. But to truly understand whether Dumbledore was evil or simply a man hardened by the weight of prophecy, we must go deeper. We must look at his past, because long before he met Harry Potter, before he led the Order of the Phoenix, Albus Dumbledore made choices that cost lives. And it all began with a boy named Gellert Grindelwald. Dumbledore's first true sin wasn't abandoning Harry. It was abandoning his own sister. In his youth, Dumbledore was brilliant, charismatic, idealistic, and arrogant. After the tragic death of his mother, Albus was left to care for his two siblings, Aberforth, the fiery younger brother, and Ariana, a broken girl with barely controlled magic. Ariana had been attacked by Muggle boys at 6 years old. The trauma left her unstable, not insane, but shattered. Her magic turned inward, unpredictable and dangerous. But Dumbledore, newly out of school, had other plans. Not to heal her, not to care for her, but to chase dreams with another dreamer, Gellert Grindelwald. Grindelwald wasn't just a friend, he was a mirror. A mind as sharp as Dumbledore's, but far more willing to use force to remake the world. And yes, that phrase would follow Dumbledore for the rest of his life. For the greater good, a shield behind which all his coldest decisions would hide. It was during this time that the Blood Pact was formed, a magical binding that prevented the two from dueling. A symbol of love or complicity. But then came the day everything changed. A confrontation between Albus, Aberforth, and Grindelwald turned into a violent duel. Spells flew, chaos erupted, and in the crossfire, Ariana Dumbledore died. No one knows whose spell struck her. Not Grindelwald's, not Aberforth's, not even Dumbledore's. And that ambiguity, that unbearable guilt, it haunted Dumbledore more than anything else. He would never again seek power. But he would spend the rest of his life trying to control it from the shadows. It's that guilt, that obsession with order and correction, that shaped the Dumbledore we see in the main series. A man who never truly stopped manipulating the world around him. He just became more subtle, more tactical, and ultimately, more dangerous. Because here's where the darkness deepens. When Dumbledore learns that Harry is a Horcrux, that a part of Voldemort's soul lives inside him, he doesn't panic. He doesn't look for an alternative. He doesn't even tell Harry. Instead, he entrusts Severus Snape, a man he once hated, with a terrible burden, to guide Harry, to protect him, but also to let him die at the right moment. Dumbledore's plan was always built on Harry's death, not as an unfortunate side effect, but as a necessary component. The boy had to die so the Dark Lord could fall. And what about Snape, the most tortured double agent in wizarding history? Snape, who killed Dumbledore not out of hate, but as part of Dumbledore's own design. Yes, Dumbledore arranged his own death. Not to spare himself pain, but to maintain control, to orchestrate every final move of the war, even after his death. His murder was a message, a performance, and Snape just another piece in the puzzle. So when Harry finally learns the truth, that he must die to defeat Voldemort, what does he do? He walks into the Forbidden Forest alone, terrified, 19, and Dumbledore isn't there to hold his hand. He's only there in the vision after death, calm, composed, radiant in white light, almost proud, because the plan worked. The Horcrux inside Harry is destroyed. Harry returns, Voldemort falls, and the war ends. But at what cost? Dumbledore spent decades fighting for what he called the greater good. And in that pursuit, he built an army of child soldiers, manipulated allies, and concealed truths. He placed unbearable burdens on the backs of teenagers, not because there were no other options, but because he believed he knew best. Because he believed only he could steer the chaos of destiny. And that's the question we must now ask. Does the end justify the means? Is a man who sacrifices others for peace still a hero, if peace is achieved? Or is he simply a more refined villain, one whose cruelty comes not from hatred, but from love twisted into control? In the end, Dumbledore was not Voldemort's opposite. He was his reflection. What Voldemort could have been if he had loved, if he had believed in sacrifice, but never let go of control.